Balaram Ferguson, Bali Ferguson here with Vrndavan Brannon Parker.
Hello.
You just returned from a recent 6-month trip to India. He's published a popular book and is working on a second book, and we're going to talk to him about how that's been going.
Yeah.
So, so the first book you published is Kandhamal Burning, Orissa in the Crossfire. And this was about some violence in Orissa to do with conversion efforts. And you went and did a report and published it. And this was later influenced the U.S. State Department's annual report on international religious freedom. Could you tell us more about that?
Well, basically there was this one part of India called Orissa, and it's actually the home to the most number of tribes in the whole country. And there's one district called Kandhamal, which is home to the Kanda people. And they're a very ancient tribe. Actually, when Emperor Ashoka was doing his military campaigns of conquest throughout India, he had one final battle. And the battle was so horrific and the death toll so high that he basically gave up, forswore war and violence. And it's said that he became a follower of Lord Buddha and the path of non-violence. And the people he was fighting were these same Kanda people, these Kond. The Orissan pronunciation is Kond, but the name is spelled Kanda, so I'll just use that term, Kanda. And basically this was also the last part of India to be conquered by the British in their efforts to conquer India. So it wasn't until like the 1890s, I believe, that this part of India was brought into under British control.
Right.
And so basically, for various reasons, the British would establish roads, missionaries would come in, liquor merchants would come in, land speculators, and basically a situation that duplicates the American story, the American history of the tribal experience when the Europeans came over. The same thing was duplicated in India with these people. And so rather than progress, what all of this brought was great chaos and trauma and tragedy to the tribal society of the region. But because these people were very deeply traditional, very committed to their religion and their culture, they resisted. And because they had a very long history and legacy of a warrior culture, they didn't take the British inroads into their territory lightly. And so they responded through very many successful military campaigns, and even the British recognized them as some of the best tactical strategic military commanders in the field against them. And so the British were unable to beat them, actually, so they developed a strategy which we kind of see duplicated in the modern era. They basically declared them to be evil, human sacrificing tribal cultists or something. And in the name of stamping out human sacrifice, the British were given carte blanche to do whatever they want in this part of India. So they came in and basically massacred them. And it's said that even though some of these tribes people did do human sacrifice, the amount of people the British killed in a 2-year period far outnumbered the amount of human sacrifice victims over 10,000 years.
Wow. When you talk about human sacrifice and thousands of victims, this reminds us also of the conquest of America.
Mm-hmm.
And so many have drawn, Columbus Day was just last week, many have drawn a comparison between the American Indians, because Columbus is looking for Indians, and the Hindus and indigenous Indian tribals in India. Could you elaborate on that connection and what that means?
Well, basically, throughout history, if you follow it, India was always the goal of some of the world's greatest leaders and conquerors, whether it was Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, even this one Assyrian queen, Semiramis. She also went to India. There's ancient legends of Hercules actually going with an army into India. So we find that India has always been, on the maps of, conquerors, and not just conquerors, but people who are interested in high civilization.
Yeah.
And so what we see is when Columbus, he was going there, what had happened is, due to the Islamic conquest, the West had been cut off from India, right? And so the Portuguese were the first to go around Africa and reach India. And so then the rest of the Europeans were competing to, to get in on the act, and basically trade and develop economic ties with India. And the reason is because India was a bountiful, wealthy civilization. And so when Columbus did his famous voyages, he was actually looking for this same India. And it's an interesting coincidence that when Columbus went was right during the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it was...
so he went in 1492 and Chaitanya's birth was 1486.
Yes, less than 10 years.
Right.
So I believe, there's a cosmic hand has always been at play in the history of this world, And India's been at the center of it. It's like when Julius Caesar, how did Cleopatra, one of the key reasons Julius Caesar fell for Cleopatra and chose her to support her politically versus her brother, was that she promised Julius Caesar that she knew the route to India. And Julius Caesar was intrigued, it was actually one of the main things that intrigued his interest, whet his appetite, and then later on she was obviously quite an interesting lady, and she definitely worked her magic on him. But one of the key things that she used to attract him initially was India. And so what we have in India is, even to this modern day, we have the ancient world is alive in India. So within India, you can go to the most cosmopolitan cities like, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and within 1 hour or 2 hours, you can be in the most, prehistoric tribal setting where people have lived as they ever have for thousands upon thousands of years. So we have that same ancient pulse of life vibrantly existing within India. All kinds of societies, languages, cultures.